Welcome to the Best Business Podcast, the podcast for established marketers, entrepreneurs, and CEOs, the ones who want to join me in my mission to create 200 new multi-millionaires who solve world problems with entrepreneurship. If that's you, then this podcast was created to give you access to the tools, training, strategies, and tactics you need to achieve multiple seven-figure profits as soon as possible. This world needs the best business you can build, so please get ready, open your mind, believe you can do this, and let's build a better world together for future generations. Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always, and today we are joined by a friend and one of my esteemed mentors, whether he knows it or not. A man you should all know, and if you don't, you will soon, the one and only Brian Kurtz. Let me tell you a little bit about Brian. Brian has been a serial direct marketer for over 35 years. He's never met a medium he didn't like. And yes, he's had much success, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but he also admits to trying to sell subscriptions and books on the back of ATM receipts and under yogurt lids because it seemed like a good idea at the time. So after 34 years and many of them as VP of the company, Brian left his beloved and the world-famous boardroom in January 2015. Over 34 years, he mailed close to 2 billion, with a B, pieces of direct mail, and he did not lick every stamp, in case you were wondering. For those of you who don't know, direct mail is the godfather of most of what works today in online marketing. It's just done digitally now. He was also responsible for the distribution of millions of other impressions and promotions in a wide variety of media, both offline and online, using the most innovative direct marketing techniques while working beside the most legendary copywriters and consultants who have ever lived in the history of the world ever. Under Brian's marketing leadership, Boardroom's revenues went from approximately $5 million in 1981 to a high of over $150 million in 2006. Brian was instrumental in building Boardroom's print and electronic newsletters, including Bottom Line Personal, Bottom Line Health, Bottom Line Secrets, and Daily Health News, all which are now around 2 million subscribers. I want you to think about that the next time you're stuck in traffic. I want you to look around and think about how many people you can see in their cars, and then close your eyes to try to imagine 2 million subscribers. Just let that sink in. He was also responsible for selling tens of millions of books, mostly in health and finance, for consumers. His new mission for the next 35 years of his career is as the founder of Titans Marketing, LLC. He will be the bridge between the eternal truths of direct response marketing and all that is considered state-of-the-art in direct response today. In September 2014, to kick off that mission, Brian hosted an event I was fortunate enough to attend, an event many call the event of the decade, Titans of Direct Response. Titans brought together the greatest minds in direct response marketing from the last 50 years, both as speakers and attendees. Titans Mastermind is the next big step in that mission as the bridge. Now, Brian writes and speaks regularly. Recent content can be found at www.briankurtz.me, BrianKurtz or Z.me. But truth be told, Brian is really just a little league baseball umpire and does his direct marketing stuff on the side. His ultimate goal is to umpire in the Little League World Series in Williamsport while he's still upright, and he hopes it happens soon. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. I value our every exchange, and I'm so grateful you're joining us again on my show. How are you doing, my friend?
Thank you. Thanks for having me on again. I mean, I didn't know if I could get a second gig on Daryl's podcast, because I know your podcast is growing like crazy and you've got a long line of people. So to have me on a second time, I feel really honored. It's like hosting Saturday Night Live for the second time.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. It's a big compliment coming from someone with your stature and with your track record. Brian, I mean, you're just a good, everybody loves you and everyone loves when you come around, and you really do. That eternal truth is a great way to cite that, because it's not like, this is the other thing for people that are listening, history tends to repeat itself, and there's something that, like, right now the tactics have changed, but there's something where, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the principles never change, the strategies sometimes change, and the tactics frequently change. And after 35 years of cutting your teeth, literally selling millions of things, and in television and radio and print and online, I mean, there's a lot that can be learned, and I know just from you, you're such a humble guy. Like, sometimes you're like the hot girl that doesn't know she's hot, like when you're in a room sometimes, where it's like everyone just is like holding on to your every word, and you're just like, you're a little league umpire, like, what? I'm just Brian, like, what's going on, man? So it's an honor
So what
and pleasure.
you're saying is the thing that popped into my head as you were talking was, you're absolutely right. I mean, the tactics are changing. They're changing by the minute.
Mm.
I mean, so much due to technology. And I'm reminded of something that I just used in a speech recently for some more novice marketers. And what I was talking about was a very interesting concept. So maybe I'll just share this with you because I think your audience will
Yeah,
enjoy it.
please do.
But I think that there was always a rule of thumb in direct marketing, which I've been talking about quite a bit lately, because all my clients seem to need to understand this, which is what's called the 40-40-20 rule. And what the 40-40-20 rule states in direct marketing or any marketing campaign is that the success of the campaign is generally dependent on 40% on the list and the audience that you select, 40% on the offer that you make to that audience, and then 20% on the creative or copy
Mm.
that you message to that audience with
Hmm.
that offer. And what's interesting is that people interpret that as saying, oh, the creative's not as important, which is not true at all. It's just saying that, the perfect creative to the wrong list with the wrong offer guarantees you no response.
Right.
But mediocre creative to a perfect audience for what you have to offer with an irresistible offer, you're going to make some money. And that's what happens a lot online with people who don't depend a lot on the creative. But if
Mm.
you put all those three things together, you go through the roof. And the thing I wanted to mention is kind of a corollary that I heard to this recently, which kind of made me a little bit nauseous, because it was basically someone online saying, an online marketer saying that the 40-40-20 rule is dead. And look, the 40-40-20 rule is not an exact number. It could be 42-28, whatever. It doesn't,
Right.
but it doesn't really, but the concept I think is pretty sound. In fact, I'm going to do a blog post that's going to say when 41% is a majority, and people will think I'm talking about the US elections, but what I'll be talking about is that 41% might be list and maybe only 39 is offer because the list might be the most important thing, and I'll make a case for that.
Mm.
But this article that I read online said that no, the 40-40-20 rule is dead, and we want to talk about the 25-25-25-25 rule. And I'm like, what the hell is this? So I'm reading, and it says, well, the new rule is it's 25% list, 25% offer, 25% creative, and 25% technology. And again, I'm not a Luddite. I'm not saying that technology is not critical. I'm not saying that we'd be nowhere with all of what we can do online today without technology and everything that we do offline, because the offline moves to online. And so I believe in technology, but to talk about technology as being as important as list, offer, and creative really bugged me. Now, maybe I'm sounding like, bitter grandpa here, but I just was really annoyed. And the reason why I was annoyed is that, I remember the quote, and I have this in my new book.
Mm.
It's a quote from Bill Bernbach, and who was a great advertising man in the age of the Mad Men in the 60s and maybe even before in the 50s. And Bill Bernbach had a quote that said, never adapt your technique to the idea, adapt your idea to the technique. So the
Mm.
concept here would be, the marketer today falling in love with testing on Facebook, and then fits whatever they have into Facebook, as opposed to having just a killer idea, a killer message, a killer, just total irresistible offer, and then say, you know what, I can make this work on Facebook. I
Right.
can make this work in email marketing. I can make this work in display. I can make this work in direct mail. I can make this work on TV.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I just want to emphasize that don't ignore all the media that's available. I mean, advertising opportunities are now infinite, which is a wonderful time to be a marketer. But don't let the technology kind of be a shiny object
Hmm.
uh, in lieu of getting the fundamentals and the basics right. So again, I know I probably sound
No,
like a
not at
bitter
all.
old man.
I really agree with that because it's the same thing. Like if you're trying to offer the world's greatest steak to someone who just finished a full course meal, it's not like the offer might be great, but the list is off. And Gary
Right.
Halbert's famous. A lot of my listeners know. I'm a big fan of Gary. That he's got the whole thing of like if I wanted to be successful running a burger joint and I was going to compete against you, you could have everything which you want. What do you want? And of course what he says in the end, which trumps everything, is I want the starving crowd. And I think that's
Starving
really,
crowd,
yeah.
hungry customer. Right.
That's so true. So I kind of agree. I understand like that technology might play a part in it, but it's almost like when people are like, and maybe I mean, obviously, I'm going to agree with what you say, but I don't want to try and be a yes man. But I honestly think that it's like when people talk about like having a great product as a given. Like when people talk about like if that was to say that was part of it, like 40% is list, 40% offer, 20% copy, 20% great product. Well, that's a given. Like you're not going to go anywhere if your product isn't great, and if you're not continually improving it based on feedback. Now, I've heard stories of kind of a diminishing ROI on how great it is versus whatever, but I really think that you can't go wrong always continually trying to make your product better and better and better. But that being said, that's kind of like a given. Like that's a cost of doing business. That's not necessarily what's going to make or break what you're doing, I think. And so, at least
Yeah, it's not, yeah, it's not an either or. And again, I don't want this to, be a conversation about, ignore technology by any means. In
no,
fact,
no.
just the opposite. Embrace it and use it to its fullest capacity. But, the fundamentals and if look, I'll be gone one day, and there'll be other people that might be want to talk about fundamentals. But if I can leave something behind, it's that the stuff that has been forgotten. I sat in a mastermind meeting once, feeling very inferior. I mean, I go to a lot of mastermind meetings with internet marketers and people who know me well and know my background, and you have that incredible introduction of me, would think, why would he ever feel insecure? And just like everybody else, I'm a human being. And
Mm-hmm.
so I go into a meeting where, a mastermind meeting where everybody in the room, I think, is smarter than me.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in the room is doing more online than I'll maybe ever do. And so I'm always like just sitting there being, the consummate student and always trying to learn and then be able to teach based on the fundamentals that I know and then apply the new technology. But a couple of things. One is that, someone in one of my masterminds once, I guess maybe I was doing a woe is me, you guys are so smart. I wish I was as smart as you. And this woman looked at me and she didn't even know me that well, but she knew my background. And she said, Brian, you have nothing else to prove. And I'm like, I looked at her and I'm like, what do you mean? And she goes, you talk like you need to prove something. You don't need to prove anything. You need what it seems like you really want to do is figure out what you've accumulated over 35 years and how it applies, you know, to what's happening today and create a 1 + 1 = 3
Mm-hmm.
scenario. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's kind of where I get caught. Look, we all get into, bouts of low self-esteem. And I think it's important for your listeners to hear that from me because you built me up so much in that introduction. But if you start reading your press clippings, I wrote a blog post about the biggest mistakes of my career. And one of them was based on the fact that I thought, I had nailed direct response TV in a big way to the tune of, $200 million plus. And then I thought I could do no wrong. And so I started, just doing one infomercial on TV after another, and it was one disaster after another. And when I
Mm-hmm.
make mistakes, they're millions of dollars at a time, in
Mm-hmm.
those days.
Mm-hmm.
So I long way of saying that the idea is to put this all together and to be in the right rooms with people who have the widest variety of experience. So I always put myself in rooms, this because we
Yep,
talked about it at Titans. You're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
that's right.
And so I live to be in those rooms, but you got to come and play big.
Yep.
You got to come with what you got.
Mm-hmm.
Jay Abraham, his classic line, get everything you can out of all you've got, is one of his best book. And
Mm-hmm.
so you got to come to every meeting, every situation, every marketing project, every consultation, every mastermind meeting. What are my assets? What do I have to deliver here? And how can those interact with all the other assets in the room?
Yep.
Not the assholes in the room, the assets in the room.
Right. Yeah.
And so, I just want to emphasize that and this idea that, going into a room, figuring out what you have to prove is going to basically set you back. And, um, humility is one thing, playing small is another. All these lessons are things that I've learned over the years that make sure that I get the most out of everybody in my life and they get the most out of me.
Mm-hmm. And you've had, yeah, you definitely have a ton to offer. Now, based on even what you just said, the list, the offer, the copy, your background, like you started as a list guy. What are some of the fundamentals of like lists? Because even, we both know Ben Simpkin. He came on here, he's now up, I think he's like $1.4 billion worth of sales in Facebook advertising. He's an avid follower of yours. I think he might even be in your mastermind. And I just know that even when in his interview, he said, Abraham Lincoln's quote, forgive me, I forget if it's 6 or 7 hours, we'll go with seven. But he was like, if I had 7 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend six sharpening my axe. And Ben was saying, if I had 7 hours to plan a marketing campaign, I would spend six of them focusing on the target market. Now, can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, you've been like that's how you got started, isn't it? Like you were just I don't,
Yes.
yeah, like
Yeah, I mean, I was in the list business in direct mail for the first 10 years of my career. The lists that were managed at Boardroom, we had lists of our subscribers and book buyers, which were in high demand. They were, affluent direct mail buyers. So I was able to rent those lists to just about everybody, whether it's Money Magazine or Consumer Reports or Sharper Image Catalog back then, or charitable fundraisers, and everybody used my list. So I really learned the art of list segmentation at the base level, how you select those lists for different customers. And as my career went on, I realized that, everything is about list segmentation. And I can tell you to this day, when I walk into a new client and they want to figure out, this, how we do marketing at the highest level, how we message and offer to either our own lists or the lists that we rent or do affiliates on the outside if it's online. The first thing that I talk about is, what segments do you have on that list? How can we decide what's on that list? I mean, the difference between, a customer, the difference between a suspect, a prospect, a customer, a high ticket customer, a former customer. Every one of those people, I just gave you 5 segments that are so basic, and every one of those segments need to be talked to differently.
right,
So, for example, everybody's got a big list if they've been in business for a long time.
yep,
And the people that have spent a lot of money with you deserve a way different messaging than the people who've spent less with you, deserve a way different messaging than people who have been kicking the tires and not spent a dime with you,
yep,
versus the people that you got from some traffic source that you need to romance and develop a relationship with before you can sell them anything.
right,
And so this idea that one size fits all that goes back to the 40-40-20 when I said just because the creative is the 20% doesn't mean it's less important.
right,
What it means is it needs to be focused on based on the segmentation of your list and different messaging to different segments. And I got to tell you, a lot of the consulting assignments that I've gotten since I've left Boardroom in the last year and a half started with getting the marketer out of the mindset that one message fits all to their list, because it was so easy. Email is so cheap.
yeah,
Direct mail was so expensive. So
yep,
I always used to say, how paying postage made me a better marketer.
yep,
And because we had to think about so much about what went into the mail before we sent anything,
yep,
because it would cost us a mint if we blew it.
right,
In email, you can afford to just send a lot of stuff and think it's not costing you anything. But it
yep,
is, because even if it's not costing you a lot in dollars, you send the wrong message to the wrong segment of your list, they're going to remember and they're not going to respond next
yep,
time. So
yeah,
I think that thinking about every message to every segment of your list could be the most important thing you do. And you look at it in every online launch. I mean, look at the affiliates, with the affiliate world, which I'm not a big part of, but I watch it very closely. If you're an affiliate, Daryl, for a new offer, how you present that offer to what segment of your list. I mean, why would you want to sell an offer for a membership piece of software to a bunch of people on your list who can barely pay the rent,
yep,
for example? It's a
yep.
very stupid example, but a simple one.
No, no, it's a good one because they don't have any
And
money.
yeah, if they don't have any money, it's like, you should be working on getting them your podcast and getting them
Yep,
information and getting them um, teaching and learning so they can get to that next level, as opposed to hitting them with a $2,000 software product.
yep,
So I that there's something I call congruent marketing that I'm really passionate about. And it's all about that you really need to be congruent. And so, you know, the story I told, I believe, in a recent blog was someone who had a list who was kind of in a woo-woo, personal development area.
Okay.
So when they sold stuff to that, so they were giving, daily motivation and all that kind of stuff to their list. And so obviously things they could sell to that list would be a yoga program, meditation program, things that seemed consistent with the kind of people that were on the list. And I remember the story goes that there was one offer that they sold to this list that was like a real estate investing offer, a good offer, not an illegal offer by any means, but you can see the disconnect right away. You got this audience that probably thinks that marketing is sort of evil, even though it's not. But to sell them a program to how to flip houses and make money when you're selling them mostly meditation, thoughtfulness, yoga, exercise, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And apparently, I don't know what the number was of unsubscribes when they got one offer to that list, but wrong offer to the wrong list. After you've spent years building
Yep.
a tribe and building an audience that loves you, you
Yep.
can you can throw it away in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I fully agree. In fact, Brian, I want to check this with you because what you just listed off as those lists, I want to, because I literally just had a good conversation about the different lists in a business, and I feel like at least in the online world, especially because there's a lot of stuff like, take for example this interview. This interview is going to go out there. There's going to be a list of people that listen to it that know you, but you don't really know them, and I call that the unknown universe. So you kind of got
Mm-hmm.
like the unknown universe, and then your social media and all that stuff. Maybe someone will reach out and they'll find you and they'll follow you on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever, right? Pinterest, whatever. And then they become kind of your known universe. You kind of know they exist, but on those platforms, you can't do a lot with those contacts. I mean, you can post on your Facebook wall, you can do some stuff, but it's not the same as if you have their email or their snail mail address. And then you have your lead list, people who have opted into something, who have signed up for some sort of free thing, who filled out some sort of quote request form, some sort of like, now they've given you their contact info so you can have a conversation. Then you've got your buyers list, the people that you've had generate or purchase something from you, at least one thing. You said your high value customer, I call it a multi-buyer list. Then you have your lost customers and your unsubscribe list. Would that be a pretty comprehensive list, or are we even like? Do you even suggest that even sub-segmenting those lists? Like, at what point are you segmenting too much? Can you segment too
I get a
much?
lot. Yeah, that's a great question, Daryl, because I do spend time, people who have a very small list in the hundreds, you don't want to over segment that list. But I'll say that, I had a client that didn't have a big list at all, but we were able to get a segment out of their list that were people who were, inquiries versus buyers. And because the buyers were people who spent between 20,000 and 75,000, it made me think that there are other people with lists that, I certainly want to talk to people. I mean, I think there are breaking points within the buyer file based on what they bought and how much they spent. So let me just do this. I mean, I think that anybody who doesn't know the RFM formula of direct marketing who's listening should probably just know it. And I think some stuff will come into their head about how they should be thinking about segmenting their list and not get caught up with whether it's too many segments or too few, but rather, what makes sense in terms of how I should speak to these audiences. So the RFM formula in direct marketing, which is basically a rule of thumb, which is R is recency, F is frequency, and M is monetary. So what that means is that, someone who responded more recently, a buyer or someone who raised their hand in the last 3 months is probably more valuable than someone who did it in the last 6 months. So that's recency. Frequency is someone who did it more than once in a short period of time. Now, if they're buyers, a recent buyer is better than a non-recent buyer, and a frequent buyer, someone who bought multiple times, is worth more than a recent buyer. And
Hmm.
then the third, monetary, is how much they spend. What's their total spend? So if you can keep track on your list of all of that data of when they respond, when they buy, so you can always know how recently they're interacting with you, how often they interact with you, the frequency, and also how many times they bought. and then the monetary, what their total spend is, you can see that the idea of having a segment that says someone who responded in the last 3 months or 6 months responded more than once and spent more than X dollars based on the price point of your product could be your VIP list, for example. And so then you go down from there and you start seeing what buckets you can create without over segmenting, as you were kind of hinting at. And it depends on the size of the list. Now, a lot of this, when you have a huge list, I mean, we had a database of 9 million names. So with 9 million names, we would do this all through statistical modeling. So I wasn't sitting there hand picking, doing it through, some kind of simple
Like
software. This was done through,
Excel spreadsheet.
yeah, yeah, major. It was beyond a spreadsheet. This was like, I'm not a statistician. I was an English major, so I don't know squat about statistics, but I hired a statistician to do all this, and they were able to create those buckets and to create the likelihood of future response based on past response. That is another rule of thumb in direct marketing, which is, obviously the most likely buyer is the previous buyer. And
Mm-hmm.
so, the idea that, you've got to really segment your list based on their trends. We call it the transaction data. People fall in love with demographic data. I want to overlay all this data on my list. You know what? The most important thing is the transaction data, what they did with you, how they responded, how they behaved, how they bought. You can put demographic data on it. I mean, if you have a product just for women, you want to create a female select, and if they only are people for over 50 years old, you want to have that demographic data as well. However, the transaction data is always going to dictate where you go and where the puck's going to be as opposed to where the puck is, using the
Mm.
Wayne Gretzky quote. So I think that in terms of segmentation, it's really, really important to segment based on recency, frequency, monetary, based on really understanding the behavior of your list. And I'll throw one more little thing in, which most people don't understand, although people who are in the know in direct marketing do, is that your best list is always your expires list.
Right.
So this idea that once a customer leaves you, that they're no longer valuable. Now, if they leave you in a huff because they hate you, well, it's a different story. But even those people can be saved. I wrote a blog post just last week called "The Return on Returns,"
Mm.
and it was all about that expires are your best list. That the previous customer are most people leave you as a customer because of time or money. They either
Mm.
don't have time to continue to digest your product or service, or it's too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to bring them back, I mean, maybe they don't have money and maybe they don't have time still when you try to bring them back. But when you do bring them back, you bring them back as family. You don't bring them
Right.
back as a new customer.
Right.
You bring them back as we want you back. We miss you as part of our family.
Yeah.
The messaging is so much about, this is what you've missed since you've been gone. We'd like to give you everything that you missed. I'll give an example. You could give a book or a special report of the last year's greatest hits if you have an
Yeah.
information product, and you give that as the premium to get them back in. This is what you missed. I know you probably might have been overwhelmed when you were subscribing, but I want to give you the special report. It gives you the highlights, and come on back in, be part of the family again. I'm using that as just
Yeah, but
one
that's
simple
that's a
example.
huge gem. It's just a great tip. Here's what you missed, and here I want to give you the best of the best, and get you caught up and get you back to speed. Again, it's so funny because I've actually hired some family recently, my little cousins, for little jobs, nothing much. But part of why I'm doing it is because, and even I've mentioned a couple times like a nonprofit I've started here, and it's funny because when I look at that, I look at it like just from such a deep level of empathy and like really wanting people to be successful and having it in bite-sized pieces that they can grasp easily, but
Right.
and it's just been such a great thing. So I just love, like, again, just how you talk about you're bringing them back as family because you're acknowledging that there's a relationship there. Like the
That's
owner or the
correct.
marketer might be so busy in their own day, they're just dealing with ones and zeros. But the reality is there's a real human on the other side of that, on the other end of that, and you need to speak to them that way. Yeah, it's just that's a great tip. That's a huge tip. So
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people get it. I mean, maybe, a lot of people listening and going, "Oh, I knew that already."
no,
But,
no,
you
no.
know, but expires, looking at your expires or your previous customers as actually maybe your best list is a really important concept.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, yeah. I hope people listening to this are taking notes. I've got like a couple of pages already. I love this. So, let's talk about your book. You got a book coming out. You've obviously got the goods. You've got a ton and a wealth of knowledge. Now, you didn't make this stuff up on your own, did you? I mean, you didn't come out your mom like some little, direct marketing genius, were you? You had mentors and people you studied under.
Yeah, you're throwing a nice softball at me. Yeah, we're all on the shoulders of giants, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like to spend. A lot of people say I give everybody else too much credit for what I know, but I have to give a lot of people credit for what I know because I've been a student my entire life. And the interesting thing, how I got involved with this book that's coming out, it wouldn't have been the first book I would have done because the first book I was going to do was I thought kind of my not my memoirs, but all of the stories of in the my stories in the marketing wars.
Right.
I always love the quote from Winston Churchill. There's nothing more exhilarating than being shot at
With a
without
result.
results.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so, I was in the marketing wars for a long time, and I was shot out without result because I survived, lost a lot of money, made a lot of money. So that was the book I thought I would do. But I was approached by Craig Simpson, who wrote a book years ago called The Direct Mail Solution, and it was a great book on like a primer on how to do direct mail. And he came to me and said, "I'm working on a new book called The Advertising Solution, which I think is right in your sweet spot, Brian. And even though I've written a lot of it already, I think I want to bring you in as a collaborator. Here's the manuscript I have so far. Would you like to be a part of it?" Now, I didn't know that was coming, so it came down the pike, and I started looking at this manuscript. Although it's not written in my personal style, it's in Craig's style. I was able to then say, "Yeah, I want to be part of this," and then I ended up editing the entire book. And what the book, even though I don't like the title, I mean, the advertising solution sounds a little old fashioned and stodgy, but why I love the title is that advertising is the term we used to use as sort of the anti-marketing, the anti-direct marketing. Advertising, general advertising was, advertising for branding and image and all of that, but who the hell knew if it was working or not?
Right.
And direct marketing was measurable advertising,
Yeah.
making sure that everything that we did was measurable and that had a return on investment, and that if you spent $1 on media, you made $1 in media, at least initially or soon, and you made more than $1 in media over the lifetime.
Right.
So when I saw the title, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to be part of a book that's called The Advertising Solution. And then when I saw what the book was about, where it was actually a profile of 6 legends of people that were kind of associated with advertising, but actually what they were legends who understood accountable advertising even before direct marketing was ever, invented.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's what got me excited, and so it was then, completely consistent with my mission as the bridge to take the fundamentals of direct marketing, which actually resided in these 6 legends books and writings and ads that were more quote unquote general advertising, but you could see how they were approaching it, that they wanted a response. They wanted to be able to have a metric called, did this advertising work or didn't it, did it not work? And so that's exciting to me. And so the 6 people profiled in this book are all just household names to me. They may not be household names to all of the listeners here, but some of them, if they follow you, they're going to know many of them. And the 6 are Eugene Schwartz, who was one of my mentors. He's the only one of the 6 that I knew personally and was a personal mentor of mine. Gary Halbert, who you've already mentioned in this interview, who was in some people's minds the godfather of copywriting. Claude Hopkins, who wrote the book Scientific Advertising, which, other than
Awesome book.
Breakthrough Advertising, which is the book by Gene Schwartz, Scientific Advertising is the second book I recommend to anybody getting into marketing even today. And just FYI, that book was written in 1923, and it
Right.
has not been updated.
Yeah.
So he wrote a book called Scientific Advertising when there was no science, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so then the fourth, so it's Schwartz, Halbert, Hopkins. The fourth legend is John Caples, who wrote the book Tested Advertising Methods.
Yep.
So he was sort of the father of testing. In a lot of ways, Gene Schwartz was, the father of, how we adapt our copy to and relate to human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Halbert was, maybe the father of copywriting. Hopkins was the father of adding science to all we do, and also that great advertising is not brilliant writing. It just needs to be natural and simple, and it has to work.
Mm-hmm.
Caples is probably the father of testing, and his book proved that tested advertising method. The fifth um, legend is Robert Collier, who might be the father of the sales letter,
Mm-hmm.
because he wrote the book called the Collier Letter Book.
Yep.
And I think I mentioned in our pre-call that I said the book's kind of a snooze, actually,
It
but
is.
an incredibly important book, and one that, I think if you're not going to read it, read our book. So at least you get the greatest hits of Collier. And the other thing Collier did, he was kind of the father of showmanship in your copy. And so much of what goes on today in terms of people who do three-dimensional mailings and things like that have a lot to look at when they look at what Collier talked about in terms of the things that he was teaching. I mean, this is a guy that lived between the years of 1885 and 1950, and yet, he knew more about how to create showmanship in your advertising than anybody I have ever in the history of advertising. And then the last legend in the book is David Ogilvy, um, who was all about the big idea. And I always say David Ogilvy he was sort of the direct marketer trapped in a general advertiser's body, and it might be the father of direct marketing. Back then, all the ad agencies were, in the days of Mad Men, there was nothing about direct marketing. And as I recall, I don't know if he was the first, but he was close to take Ogilvy and Mather Direct and make it
Mm-hmm.
Ogilvy and Mather Advertising and make it Ogilvy Direct, and had a direct marketing division of a general advertising agency. So, those are the six guys we're profiling in this book. The things that they taught me by reading they all wrote books, they all wrote ads, they are all just people that I learned from. And I have a lot of other mentors besides these six. But, considering that five of this, I met Halbert, Schwartz was a mentor, never met the other four. And yet I consider all six major influencers on everything that I do in marketing today. And so the beauty of the book is that it becomes almost like that kind of book you could keep by your desk next to the thesaurus and the dictionary, because there are checklists in the book for what every headline should have. I think that's in the
Yep.
Halbert chapter.
Yep.
I think there's a list of everything that should be in your sales letter. I think that's in the Collier piece.
Yep.
So there's so many things, what Gene Schwartz did to make sure that his copy was perfect for the audience. And there's so much about that in the book. How Halbert, really analyzed the starving crowd, as you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having a book like this, I'm not going to get rich selling books. I just want this book to get out there, and I'm so glad that Craig brought me in on the project. And then what I did was I said, Craig, the book just doesn't have enough of the work of these six guys, because we didn't have enough time or space to do a swipe file, as I would call it, of all the greatest ads that these six men were responsible for. So I said, Craig, let's create a bonus package and let people buy the book through our site. They go to our site, they hit a button, they go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever they want to buy the book, and they come back to our site. And after they show us a receipt that they bought the book, we just load them up with an incredible swipe file
That is
of
awesome.
everything from these six legends. We also
Yeah.
have some rare videos of Halbert, Schwartz, and Ogilvy that they can get on the resource page. And then I'm also going to give them, anybody who buys the book through us, the annotated and illustrated version of Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins, which is a really cool full book, annotated and illustrated, and courtesy of my friend Bob Bly. And they can download that entire PDF. It'll be like a book for their reference library forever. And all of that is on this resource page that we put together. So I just think it's just an incredible book. And then I wanted to make it so much more. And that's why, going on interviews like this with audiences that you have who really should get their hands on this information. I just think it's priceless stuff. And
Yeah, no, I'm salivating right now. If I could ever give a direct order to anyone listening, I think that honestly, this is well worth their time because, as I mentioned to you even before this call, that one of my earliest mentors was Ken McCarthy, and one of the things that I was grateful for was that he had me go back and read all these classics. You go through all these guys. I've read all their books, and I'm so grateful for that because now I talk to people today, and it's like some people look at me like I'm a genius, and I'm like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. This stuff has been working for years, but nobody's
right.
reading the old classics. I mean, you talked about Robert Collier Letter Book. It is a great swipe file book, but it is a massive book. It is tiny print. It is old English in a lot of respects, but so you got, it's almost like a research project to pull the nuggets, and the nuggets are there. And so for you guys to have gone through and to pull gems from these guys, like for the whatever you're going to charge, the $10, the $20, the $30.
I think the book is like,
It's
I don't know. I don't know what, I think it's going to be like on Amazon. I think I saw there's a pre-order page. I think it's like 17 something or
Yeah, it's peanuts.
21 or I
It's
don't know. It's crazy.
peanuts for 80
Yeah.
years times 6 plus your and Craig's influence on that. I mean, that's just like it's almost 1,000 years of the highest level performance and experience in the trenches doing this stuff with checklists and action items. It's just yeah, it's so it's called the
Yeah, so
advertising.
I
Yeah.
would just highly recommend if anybody is listening wants to go, all they have to do is go to the site we put up. It's called thelegendsbook.com, www.thelegendsbook.com. And they go to that site, they can go click buy the book, it opens up a new window, buy the book, come back, get all of these resources from Craig and I. I just think it's a wonderful thing. I think that that's why I want to get out to as many people as possible to buy the book that way. I don't really make anything on the book. I just want people to get a hold of all this information because, they could be part of my tribe, my list. I mean, look, I'm a list builder just like you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I want people to be on my list, reading my blog, reading the tips that I'll be sending over the years about these legends that go further than what even we're giving away now. So if they go to thelegendsbook.com, they'll have a great opportunity to both buy the book and get all of those bonuses. And thank you for, bringing up Ken McCarthy, who is also one of my mentors. He was one of the speakers at Titans. And, he is one of those people like Jay Abraham, like Gary Bencivenga, all the people, Dan Kennedy, all these people who spoke at my event who, drill into my head that, you just can't know it all. And what's happened before, we can accumulate this wisdom and then apply it. It's just the best way to go about. And
Yeah.
again, I don't think there's a better time ever in the history of the world to be a marketer. But why not jump into this incredible world of marketing with the most assets and equipment and toolkit, whatever metaphor you want to use, that you can get. And a lot of it comes from, legends like these six guys.
Yeah, no, that's huge, and some of my listeners may know I've been coming back and forth from the Philippines. There's a nonprofit that I've been involved in that I've actually named the One Book Foundation. One Book Can Change a Life Foundation because
Mm,
one book can change a life. I have experienced that myself, and the concept is there's a bunch to it, and I'm not going to go in because this isn't an interview about my nonprofit, but one of the parts of this nonprofit is making sure that these people get certain books with certain type of education into their hands because it could change their life for where they're at. And this is just the perfect offer for. I mean, we talk about list and offer and copy. I mean, this people
yes.
listening to this show. I mean, I'm sorry, guys. But you as a a dear friend, you need to know the lessons in this book. I haven't even seen it, but I do know each of these experts. And Brian, just to have been like to have known and studied under Eugene is just such a blessing. Like he was so fun. I mean, it's almost like a no wonder. Like when you look at the people you've studied under, and you know, and even Dick Benson and the people that you got to like rub elbows with and work beside in your career. I mean, it's almost like no wonder he's got 2 million paying subscribers. Like because it's just there's no a lot of this stuff, there's no bean counter in the sky that's going to determine how much money someone can or can't make, or someone who's predetermined how big your business can grow. A lot of this stuff is literally just like, it's like plumbing. Like if, it's like electrical wiring in your house. If you wire the building like this, if you connect these types of pipes to the main line outside your house and run it through and then set up a tap like this with a hot and a cold, you'll have a sink. And a lot of this stuff, it's literally, I mean, I don't want to say it's going to be like overnight success, but it literally is that simple, that if ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is pain and suffering and failure. And if you just know this stuff, you can avoid that, and even, and just be free to jump in. I mean, even like you jumping in and out of business, helping people grow their businesses, make more money. And that's even why I started this podcast, because of these types of books that I've personally read and the value I've been able to give to people. You just want to help people, you just like, hey, I just want you to know, even like you said, I just want to get this information out there because it could change your life. And a book, I've always said, a book is such a great investment because, again, for like $20, you can access almost 1,000
Yes.
years of the highest level experience.
Yeah, let me just tell a couple quick, if you have a couple of minutes, just a couple of things about Gene Schwartz. So, he wrote a book called Breakthrough Advertising. Talk about a book. I mean, the book was
Yeah,
written in 1966. Not one word has been changed from the original. I own the rights to it currently, hoping to get the rights for the next 15 years and then create a course around the book as well, is one of my dreams.
yeah,
But the book is, again, 1966, not one word has changed, 100% relevant today. So that tells me that's not a book about copywriting in 1966. It's not a book about creative in 1966. It's a book about human behavior. And probably the most important book written about that. So, the kinds of things I learned from Gene, he was an amazing man. I mean, you talk about someone who wrote great copy, had his own business, and understanding the value of lists. So I wrote a blog post which was called "It's Not Always About the Money," and it was all about Gene, how what Gene Schwartz decided to do. He had such a talent for copywriting, and he was able to write packages for me at Boardroom, for Rodale Press, for all the great health publishers, and yet he had this other little business on the side that was his own little health publishing company, little books that he did. So how's he going to get to mail the Boardroom health list, the Rodale health list, all the best book buyer lists in the world? He actually, instead of getting paid cash to write copy for us, he would exchange his copy for names. So he would write a full blown package for me for a health book. And then in exchange, I would give him 750,000 names from my database of book buyers, health book buyers, that he could use for his little business called Instant Improvement. And so basically, Gene knew that instead of having me pay him $20,000 to write a package or a promotion, it was better for him to get the 750,000 names that he then mailed for his books, created his list, did
yeah,
cross sell and upsell to his list,
yeah, yeah.
rented his list. Do you think he made more than $20,000 doing that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So yeah, so I was just, that is such forward thinking on someone's part. And the fact that he was a copywriter and understood lists like that just gives you an indication of why I want to do the blog post called Why When 41% is a Majority, right?
Right.
And the thing about Gene also is that he read everything. So what goes around comes around. We're talking about reading his book and reading all these great books. Gene's library took up an entire room in his sprawling Park Avenue apartment, and the guy read everything. He read fiction, he read nonfiction, he read business books, he read finance books, he read health books, and he read the National Enquirer. He read everything so that he was so well read about culture, about what was going on in the world, and that's what made him an amazing copywriter. The power of reading for a world-class copywriter can't be understated. The power of reading to be a world-class marketer, as you and I are talking about it for our careers, can't be understated either.
Yep, 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 yep.
I've got lots of stories about Gene. Many of them are in the book.
I know. I mean, with the Titans, you gave out some interview, like a seminar that Gene did, and I was so captivated by it. He talked about how he would sit down at his desk and he would work for 33 minutes and 33 seconds, and he's like,
Yeah, he had an eight time.
yeah,
Yes, yes.
he didn't
Yeah,
move.
we have.
He's like, sometimes I sit down, I didn't feel like writing copies, so I'd play around with my pencil and I'd move my ruler over here, and he's like, and then I'd be like, maybe I'll get started. I'll just do 2 minutes of something. It's like next thing you know, he'd go. Like he had a system for everything. He thought entrepreneurs should have 3 projects going at any time because we're too preoccupied with just, like that shiny object syndrome. So it's important for us to have things that we can share ideas between. And that's part of why I love client work, is because I love feeling like that chess player in Central Park playing like 5 games of chess at once. Like I'm addicted to that. And so I think in that, but then when I saw that video, it like clicked for him. Like, oh, that makes sense. I just need, I need an outlet. Like I have ADD. I don't watch TV. I do watch movies, but I read, and I haven't been diagnosed with ADD, but I just don't sit still very well. And that was just, those 2 things really helped me. Like just,
Yeah,
even now.
33 on the egg timer
Yeah.
is huge. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not just for copywriters. That could be, for anybody, getting up from their desk and,
But
you
that's
know,
there's something
yeah.
called the Pomodoro technique, and that's even some of the best productivity experts in the world. They recommend, and this is what I do, dividing your day into 30-minute blocks. And the Pomodoro, you set it for 25 minutes, and it goes off, and then you get a 5-minute break. And for that 25 minutes, your phone's off, everything's off. You're only doing or trying to do that one thing. And yeah, you might blank out, stare at the wall. You might be like drooling, but that's just the best way to just avoid distractions. And I just found that just liberated liberated me from just having to feel like I have to put in an 18-hour day to get progress, because I would realize that, look, I only got so many Pomodoros in me today, and it just gave me freedom to be okay with, and just be real about what you can get accomplished. I mean, again, for the people listening to this, you can read all these experts' books, but I highly recommend you get this book that Brian and Craig have put together. And just even having experienced Brian as well. I mean, one of the things that made Titans so phenomenal, Brian, was that you had special gifts for the females in the room, the female marketers. You had special gifts for the list builders in the room. You guys got feedback, and people were like, there's something about the food, and all of a sudden, not only was it great food, but it was like the healthiest, most up-to-date food on. I mean, I was so impressed by that, because I mean, it's funny that Instant Improvement was the name of Eugene Schwartz's book. That whole event, it was like instant improvement the whole way through, and it really showed the way you do business and how responsive you are to really taking care of client. Yeah, I'm gonna stop,
Well,
because
that
I feel
was
like
it.
I'm.
I mean, now think about it. That was a list. So I had a list of 350 people who, in real time, I was trying to please. I was trying to make sure. And actually, that women thing was a tough one because all the speakers were men.
Yeah.
Because the event was a tribute to Marty Edelston, who was the founder of Boardroom,
Mm-hmm.
and all the people that helped Boardroom in their early days just happened to be men. There weren't that many women. There were 2 women that were very helpful to us in our early days, but they had both passed. So what I did was, as you recall, one was Joan Throckmorton, who was an amazing copywriter. The other was Rose Harper, who was a list expert. And I found out of print copies of their classic books, and that's what I gave out to the female
Which is
copywriters
so
and marketers in the
thoughtful.
audience, because
Yeah.
I was feeling bad. I mean, I was feeling bad that we didn't have any female speakers, because it wasn't an event that a female speaker would have been a fit, because I'm no chauvinist. I mean, all of my staff at Boardroom, my coworkers, everybody, I mean, mostly women. So that was a tough one for me. And so I'm glad you brought that up. But again, I think the key point is that was a list of 350 people, and you're always serving your list. You're always serving, and I had VIPs. You were a VIP
Yep.
at the event.
Yep.
So were given different things, and I had to treat you a little bit differently because you spent more money.
Yep. Yeah, I just, It's yeah, just Brian, just use an example. Like, guys, you need to get on Brian's list just to observe like 35 years of experience of doing this at like the highest tier. I mean, it was just, Brian, it was just so impressive because you would acknowledge it and it talk about the entering the conversation in people's minds. Like, because the women, they probably were thinking that, like, oh, there's only men up there.
Yeah.
But you're so empathetic, and most events, they don't have a clue. They're like, I'm going to teach this, this, this. But not only were you considering, like, what do people need to learn? Who are the titans of the industry, but you were so focused on the attend. It was just so It was so impressive.
Well,
It
it was
was.
funny. I think I opened my speech with something like the things you don't think I know that I know. Like it was almost like one of them, the event was on 9/11. Um,
Yeah.
so I wanted to acknowledge 9/11. And I also talked about how Marty and I dealt with 9/11, which was close to us because we were working. We weren't in New York City at the time. We were in the New York metropolitan area, and we used to be in New York City. I mentioned the women thing. I mentioned people had told me that the sales letter for the event was too long. And all I did was, and then I was able to talk about, no sales letter is too long or too short, just too boring.
Yeah.
And it got, 350 people at an average of, $3,000 plus to come to a live event. So the letter might have been too long for some, but not for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, so things like that, I think, are very important. When you're writing copy, calling the elephant in the room, I call it calling the moose on the table, is just critically important in the way you write copy, in the way that you address an audience. And I'm not saying I did it perfectly or I do it perfectly, but I'm conscious of all those things based on my marketing experience.
Yeah. And so congruent with it. Now, I'm gonna try to. I mean, I know we're kind of reaching the top of the hour, but I really want to pick your brain just about one other topic before we wrap. First of all, what's the URL for the book again? It's the Legends Book. L-E-G. Wait, how do you spell
It's
it?
yeah, so it's TheLegendsBook.com, thelegendsbook.com.
Okay, go to
And then
that.
if people
Get
want
the
to get on
book.
my list,
Yeah.
it's briankurtz.me, which I think you might have mentioned in
Yeah,
my
B R
intro.
I A
And
N K U R T Z or Z dot M E. Guys, go get on his list. Go get that book. Part with the $20. I mean, just do it. It's just such a good It's such a good
thank you.
investment. So, well,
Thanks, Daryl. I
yeah,
appreciate
no,
that.
we should be thanking you, Brian, for honestly. I mean, you say marketing's not evil. This is a great example of marketing. I mean, I know that I could send you my grandma, and not only would you tend to her, you probably find out what medication she's on and the herbal versions of it because what she's taking too strong. Like you would just, that's just, I wouldn't be surprised if that was like the type of thing you did. So, but I want to pick your brain about one other thing because I do know it's a not I wouldn't say a hot topic, but it's definitely a pain point for a lot of people listening to this, and I think you can really speak to it just because of the I power method and that's building and working with a team and as an entrepreneur, especially as someone who may struggle with that, being the visionary or, and just in general, having walked in and out of so many different companies, you guys have had so many different consultants. You've obviously, over 34 years, you've had to put a lot of different groups of people together. Can you speak to maybe some of the biggest challenges that you've had with teams and how you addressed it?
So I will mention iPower because that was the invention of Marty Edelston, who basically was he was a big student of Kaizen and Japanese management mostly in the 1980s, and he went to visit Peter Drucker, who was the great management consultant, and he was sitting with Peter Drucker, and he basically said, Peter, the meetings in my company stink. I mean, we have meetings, we don't have objectives, we come out of the meeting with too many ideas that we can implement, or not enough, focus and next steps and action plans. So what Drucker and Marty came up with just in conversation was this idea of called iPower. And what it did was it forced everybody to come to every meeting with two ideas, no matter how small. And I think so one of the big things from that, without getting into more detail on it, is that I think the key is that you've got to, work into all of your employees' mentality that they have a stake. And you got to treat them like they have a stake too. You can't just pay lip service to it. So you have to let them bring ideas to meetings. You have to let those ideas kind of, percolate to the top. They have to be looked at, analyzed, and in many cases acted on. So I mean, in the book iPower that Marty wrote, he talks about people at the lowest level of the company coming up with ideas that saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars because they were in the front lines coming up with things that no one at the top could ever come up with, but they were encouraged to bring those ideas and they were given cash awards for it and all of that. So that's one thing that is important. I
Hmm.
think there's no. I mean, look, you can study all the books on. I'm not an HR expert. I'm not a team building expert per se, but I have built good teams, and I think that I wrote a blog post once. Who is your rainmaker? And I think it's about, because I've seen this through dealing with a lot of entrepreneurs, that most entrepreneurs are very reluctant to have a second rainmaker in their organization. That they never met an idea they didn't like as long as it was their idea. And so, I think that paying lip service to I'm listening to everybody's idea, but then ignoring them, is just not a great prescription for long-term growth. Now, some people get away with it. They're just such visionaries and such rainmakers that no one can, everyone pales compared to them in terms of bringing new ideas forward. But I will say that you got to leave room for possible. And I was lucky because Marty got to leave room for that second rainmaker. Marty left room for me to be a second rainmaker. I was privileged in that respect. So I could bring ideas forward and Marty would actually be, interested in what I had to say. Not always, a lot of times he would just nix them. But I do think that, you know, you got to have a forum for people to bring those ideas forward. I
Hmm.
mean, so I don't know. I mean, those are probably some quick things that popped into my head as you were asking the question. It's a longer discussion, but people have to feel like they have a stake. If they're just, if it's just a paycheck, they're not going to be part of the solution.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, if they're just passing through, and there was I wish I had done the research for the call. I usually like to look this stuff up, but there was actually research done on this, and companies. It was like maybe did you write? And I don't even know if you wrote about this, but no. I've read this somewhere and multiple times that companies that have an employee like you will retire with us mentality and how they treat people and even move people around and pay for training when someone doesn't fit in or isn't performing well to like care about them as an individual and be like, look, how do we support you and get you to be like better functioning? Like what role do you need? Let's do this test and figure out what type of stuff you like. Instead of just churn and burn, they actually outperformed. It was like an analysis of like the Fortune 1000 or something, and it was like the ones that had that mentality just by far, it was very statistically significant, had a higher success rate than the ones that were kind of churn and burn because it was like all hands on deck. Anytime the economy went south or something like that, it was all hands on deck to keep it afloat because everyone had a buy-in. Everyone was being taken care of, and you hear about that with like Google and that, and these new tech companies that want to have really employee like friendly environments. So what you mentioned about trying to like, I just think that as far as to just pull something out of your butt in 2 seconds is a really great. I mean, that's just a great action item. Everyone listen to this again. If you're taking notes, write this down. First, write down thelegendsbook.com and go there and buy the damn book. But aside from that, write down from now on, my company doesn't churn and burn staff. We invest in our people, and everyone needs to come to every meeting with at least 2 ideas, and we reward them for the ideas that get implemented. And ideas don't just get presented and forgotten about. You might even need to pay someone for a few hours to take the ideas and put them through some sort of, rigmarole or some sort of, kind of battery test before they get implemented. But to make that part of the culture, everyone's showing up. How do we make this company better? How do we, and who are we serving? I mean, that was such a great. I love putting reminders on my phone. Brian, I'm going to be thinking of you every day because I'm going to add this to one of my. I have some reminders that pop up on my phone every day. You're always serving your list. I mean, I love that's you're always
Yeah, it's
serving your
true.
list. So between
You know what
that,
I'll do? I'll do something. This is not like a fast bonus or anything like that, but I do have copies of this iPower book, which is tremendous. The two ideas, and I don't have a lot of them, but your audience is an audience. I think that they would love it if they do it. So maybe I don't know, the first what I don't have that many copies in inventory, but maybe the first 20 people who, go to thelegendsbook.com and then send me an email at Brian at Brian at briankurtz.me, and they say to me that I bought your book, and basically maybe they just put Daryl in the subject line, and then that means they bought the book, and send me their mailing address. I'll send them a copy of the iPower book.
That's awesome. Yeah. Brian, thank you so much. Yeah, that's, again, guys, this is a great example of why just get on his list. Like, just go get on his list. If the information isn't world class, you're going to be treated world class. And, Brian, it's just an honor and a pleasure to have you here. It always is every time we talk. I mean, there's no reason why, or it's no surprise why people just hang on your every word. And I appreciate that you're so humble too, as well. And it's just an honor and a pleasure to be able to grow and be so early in both of our careers, because we've got, that's one of the things that I've loved. I mean, 33 now, and I've just loved like evolving as I grow. And I'm just really excited.
Yeah.
You are one of the people that I'm really excited about growing alongside. And even my listeners, they should be really excited as well. This won't be the last time you're on our show, but thank you for your time today.
You're always too kind, too generous. And the fact that, I'm on like the second 34-year journey now, but it's all just so exciting, and I'm amazed at what you've accomplished at such a young age as well. So, keep up the amazing work. I mean, it's just, I was so happy that you said yes, that I could be on your show a second time.
That's awesome. Brian, thank you so much. All the best to you and your loved ones and your players, and your goal of being a little league umpire at the championship games.
Yeah. Yeah, the World Series just took place, so one more year I didn't make it, but I'll try again next year.
Well, yeah, you're one step closer, right? Every no is one step closer to a yes. So
I guess that's right.
If you need votes or something, like if you need people to sign a petition,
it's all political. No one can help me except myself on this one.
Got it. Okay. Well, we're rooting for you, Brian. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've reached the end of our interview. Now, first, let me thank you for listening. I appreciate and respect you more than you'll ever know. And now I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. First, what 3 lessons did you just learn? What 3 aha moments just jumped out at you? Second, what can you implement for yourself and your business in the next 24 hours? Third, what can you give to someone else to help you with, or give to them to just do it for you? Whatever it is, remember, taking action is the secret sauce to results. Now, if you think this interview would be helpful for a friend, please give them a link to it. It'll help them and it'll help me too. I'd also like to invite you to help me find out more about the challenges you're facing, your dreams, your goals, and how I can help you overcome what's holding you back. We both do better when we know better, and your success is my success. So please reach out and interact. You can visit our website, bestbusinesscoach.ca for Canada or California, where I'm from and where I'm living. You're welcome to also try out one of our paid programs. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and pretty much every other social media channel you can think of. You should also subscribe to the podcast, and if you're enjoying them, please leave us a nice review. It really helps. That's all for now. Once again, thank you. Take care of yourself, and remember, the world needs the best business you can build. And I believe in you.